Caldwell and McLaren will have to act quickly. There are only minutes to spare.
It was thought that James Hunt would not be allowed to take the restart.
And the crowd got behind James as a driver they wanted to see in that restart in a way that you don't see outside a soccer match.
A slow hand clap which ran from the start-finish line all the way up to Paddock Bend and all the way round South Bank and round to Westfield Bend, and then it became boos and then it became catcalls. Then the marshals had to rush onto the track to pick up beer cans and Coke cans and even bottles. I've never seen at a motor race quite such an extraordinary display from the public.
We want James Hunt, we want James Hunt. This mini riot that was going on, which was, not very British.
McLaren were delighted that there was this confusion and delay because it gave them a little bit more time to mend James Hunt's car.
When they return to the grid, the crowd goes wild. Now James Hunt is certain to start again.
Well, Ferrari, as you could see them, their faces fell because they knew instantly what had happened, that we had fixed the race car.
And what I remember most of all, actually, in all that, is Niki Lauda in a rage getting back into his car because he'd suddenly realised how much time had passed and that McLaren had had time to prepare their race car again and get it onto the grid, and he was absolutely livid.
Back to the grid, and off they go again.
After another chaotic start, Lauda storms ahead with Hunt chasing hard on his tail.
The battle's really on now between Niki Lauda and James Hunt.
Niki Lauda in the Ferrari leading, James Hunt cheered on by the British crowd, gradually winding him in. As we went past half distance, cars go round Paddock Bend, down to the bottom of the hill, up the hill and behind the trees. As the cars then came back into our sight, the McLaren was in front. And that's when the crowd erupted.
Britain's James Hunt in a Marlboro McLaren wins the British Grand Prix.
And we did win the British Grand Prix, fair and square.
James, how much does this victory mean to you?
9 points, $20,000 and a lot of happiness.
How remarkable.
Can you give me a cigarette? Can I grab that cigarette off you? Thanks.
But Ferrari is about to spoil the party.
I think Ferrari appealed straight away after the race that, that we were, we didn't comply with the rules. We couldn't work out what kind of rule they thought we hadn't complied with.
The rule says, and I am surprised, but I'm not surprised that Alistair doesn't know well the rules. That is another example, no? That you have to complete the race course even if the race is suspended.
Instead of completing a lap, as the race was stopped, Hunt had taken a shortcut back to the pits.
In cutting behind the paddock, he didn't complete the race distance. Simple than that.
For now, the race-winning points are Hunt's, but the result hangs in the balance, waiting on a hearing scheduled for months later. The next race is at the notorious Nürburgring in Germany.
The Nürburgring was a frightening but fantastic racetrack. It's 14.7 miles round, goes up and down thousands of feet, it's got hundreds of corners. It was just generally hostile to fast racing cars, which is part of its appeal.
3 times world champion Jackie Stewart had driven the course to highlight the dangers of a track that had claimed more than 50 lives.
Every time I see this, it frightens me, because there's no barriers on the right-hand side. There's just a rock face and trees. You've got a left-hand side barrier, but that's not where you're going to go off the road. I think if I were to walk round them, I would be horrified. I would never drive around the place again. So the faster you drive around the ring, the less you know, and maybe that's the best thing to do. For a quick lap at the Nürburgring, you've probably experienced more in 7 minutes and 6 or 7 seconds than most people have experienced in all their life.
It was a pre-health and safety era. Motor racing was dangerous. It said so on the back of every ticket, and it was part of what it was.
Nearly every year in Formula One, a driver had been killed.
By this stage, I'd lost my brother was a racing car accident. So after that, I thought, I won't befriend racing drivers. I'll have them as people who work for me, but I won't become their friend because I don't want to go to their funeral as a friend. I want to go to the funeral as their team manager.
For Lauda, the Nürburgring isn't worth the risk. He calls a meeting of the drivers in an attempt to have it stopped. But his fellow drivers don't agree. He loses by 1 vote and now has no choice but to race.
Der Tod, der ja in Ihrem Geschäft an und für sich ziemlich häufig präsent ist, hat er einen Platz in Ihrem Weltbild, im Weltbild von Niki Lauda?
Na, es ist also ganz klar, dass einfach der Grand Prix-Sport eine gewisse Gefahr mit sich bringt. Und man muss einfach einmal hergehen und diese Gefahr bewältigen. Das heißt, wenn man sie bewältigen kann und weiß, dass man eben dieses Risiko eingeht, weil man es eingehen will, dann wird man weiterfahren.
For the first time in the season, it is raining on race day. But the track is so long that not all of it is wet. The choice of tyres will be crucial.
Wet tyres, they're quite tall. They've got big tread on them like a road tyre, unlike the slicks, which are smooth, no tread at all.
Like most of the field, Lauda starts the race on wet weather tyres, but quickly discovers he is losing too much speed on every dry section of the track.
After the first lap, many drivers come into the pits to change the tires. It was really a chaos. The pit stop was a little bit slow. And when Niki restarted for the second lap with the slick, he was about maybe in 10th position. For a driver, it's not good psychologically to go to race in a circuit that you judge that is too dangerous, because it puts you in a condition that you are afraid. When he restarted on the second lap, was not the cool Niki that we know.
Lauda will not complete the lap. His helmet comes off in the impact, and he is trapped in a fire burning at over 400 degrees centigrade. It will be nearly a minute before Lauda is pulled from the flames.
I put his head on my lap. Didn't want him to lie flat. But he was conscious and talked all the way through. In fact, he asked me, he said, "What's my face? Is it burned? Is it burned?" I replied, no, don't worry about it, it's okay. In fact, his forehead was badly burned and his scalp was actually charred. Rather than telling him all this, we just tried to keep him as quiet and composed as possible.
Lauda is rushed to hospital. Amongst the drivers who arrived just after the crash is James Hunt.
We weren't aware Niki was in trouble because there were racing drivers at the scene and he was conscious and talking to everybody. So when drivers came back to the pits and said, "Oh, Niki's burnt, but he's okay, he's fine."
With the track cleared, the race is restarted and Hunt is victorious. He is now just 14 points behind Lauda.
Then the news came through that he was gravely ill, so yeah, just cast a shadow over the whole thing.
I can remember it now. I remember thinking he isn't going to live, and I felt absolutely horrendous. I felt like the bottom had fallen out of my world.
Hier ist die Mannheimer Universitätsklinik Intensivstation, wo sich seit gestern Abend ein Team von Spezialisten um unseren verunglückten Niki Lauda.
When we arrived at the hospital, Niki was little by little losing conscience.
Bedrohen würden. Das Problem liegt mehr in den Veränderungen der Lunge, die eingetreten sind durch Einatmen der giftigen Gase und der Substanzen, die bei Rauchentwicklung, bei Bränden mit diesen Automobilen entstehen.
Sind jetzt mit Niki Laudas Mutter direkt in Mannheim verbunden. Gnädige Frau, stimmt es bitte, dass Niki die erste zu befürchtende Krise überwunden hat?
Aber vor Freitag ist also keinerlei, entschuldigen Sie, ich bin selber so aufgeregt. Ja. Ich war nur 2 Sekunden bei ihm drin, habe ihm gesagt, dass ich da bin, dass wir alle hier sind. Und er hat mit dem Kopf genickt, also er hat mich voll verstanden.
Danke vielmals, gnädige Frau.
Bitte.